Hello everybody, Jennifer Maker here. Sublimation tumblers are everywhere these days, especially seamless designs. But do you have trouble hiding your seams, or are you just intimidated to try making them? Well, I'm testing out some sublimation gadgets that claim to make it all easier. But which ones are worth your money and time? Let's find out. So how much time have you spent perfectly printing a design, applying it, babying the seam to get it just right, and getting excited for the result just to reveal a blotchy image or big blank spots all over your tumbler? It's heartbreaking, isn't it? Plus, it gets expensive if you can't use the result. I really don't like wasting time and materials, and I know you feel the same way. So, a gadget that can guarantee success would be a huge win for us, especially for those who are selling their tumblers. So there are a lot of companies claiming to have the answer, and I'm going to test out a few tools and share my thoughts so I can save you time and money before you buy anything. I always want to help you make the most informed purchases. So I'm testing the tumbler tool, different pincher clamps, straps, silicone bands, and a cup cradle. Plus, I found a surprise item to make a nearly perfect tumbler perfect. Most of these tools work best with straight tumblers, but I'll show you a few ways to make tapered cups too. They each have their own challenges, really. So let me show you how I tested these tools with my free tumbler designs. Aren't they adorable? So everything is fair, so we have a perfectly fair test and we can see how everything did, and then we'll get to the experiment results. Step 1, get my free tumbler designs. First, download my free designs at jennifermaker.com/540. You can either download right from that link by saving the project, or download from my entire free design collection. To find it, look for libraries in the red bar at the top, and then click either get a password if you don't yet have one, or click enter the library. Search the page for design number 540 and click the link to download the designs. I made these fun images using AI art and image editing software. You can learn more in my workshop on creating and using AI-generated art in your crafts at jennifermaker.com/AI art. So in the folder, you'll find 4 designs that you're free to use: a cute owl, an adorable elephant, a happy giraffe, or a sweet hedgehog. Now, if you're sublimating straight tumblers, use the square designs. If you're sublimating tapered tumblers, use the rectangular designs. You can learn how to edit these to work with tapered tumblers in my tutorial at jennifermaker.com/501. Step 2, prepare and print your tumbler wrap. I'm using basic 20-ounce straight tumblers for most of these tests, but I will share tips for tapered ones later. For full steps on printing sublimation designs, check out my tutorial on how to print sublimation designs from Google Docs at jennifermaker.com/sublimationprints. Now, no gadget will fix an improperly printed design, so always measure your cup. The special tape measure in my list makes it really easy. Just feed the small edge through the window like a belt, then put it around the tumbler. Carefully pull the edges away from each other, keeping it straight. And then be sure to make it really tight. The number at the arrows is your circumference. But note that even a slight angle or looseness can really throw off your design size, so keep it tight. And then take the measuring tape off, undo the loop, and use it to measure the height. Keep it straight and don't include any area without the sublimation coating, like the metal lip. Mine is 8 inches tall and 9.3 inches around. And then use Google Docs or whatever your favorite program is to resize the design approximately 1/8 to 1/4 inch bigger than the sublimation area's height. So that's 0.125 inches to 0.25 inches taller. I made my design 8.25 inches tall. Then you'll want to make your design 1/16 to 1/8 of an inch wider. So that's 0.625 inches or 0.125 inches. So you want to make it wider than the circumference so it can overlap at the seam. Smaller overlaps will be less visible, but also risk showing some white. So I made mine 9.4 inches wide. Remember to mirror the design, use appropriate printer settings, and good quality materials. I am using a converted Epson EcoTank inkjet printer that's filled with Hippo sublimation ink and A-Sub 105-gram sublimation paper. Step 3, prepare your print and tumbler for sublimation. For the best transfer, use a lint-free cloth and rubbing alcohol to remove debris or skin oils from the tumbler and let it dry. Once the print is dry after you print it, use a paper trimmer to precisely trim off all of the white paper. Removing all of the plain paper with straight cuts will make the seam easier to blend. Now wrap the design around the tumbler with the ink facing in. The paper will extend a bit past the tumbler on both ends, so the entire sublimation area is covered. Align the trimmed top and bottom edges so the design is straight and an even amount of overlap will happen at the seam. The overlapped ink will be a little darker, so making it consistent creates a less noticeable result. Once the seam is correctly overlapped, I held it in place and grabbed heat-resistant tape and a tool to test. Tool test number 1, the tumbler tool. I purchased this tumbler tool directly from the maker's website. You can get it at jennifermaker.com/tumbler tool. The makers of this tool say it makes wrapping a straight tumbler super easy, so let's try it. I tested it with and without the optional base, and I do recommend the base. The base makes the tool a lot sturdier than just the feet. There are helpful setup instructions on their website, so I made sure my tool was ready. They mentioned adjusting the clamp tightness as needed, but mine worked well right out of the box. Set it with the clamp running horizontally and open them up so you can easily access the middle, which is called the cradle. Center the tumbler in the cradle with the seam facing up. Keeping the seam in place while managing the clamps is awkward. I use my stronger hand to pull the outer clamp handle toward the tumbler and then pull the closer one in to shut it. Another method might work better for you, so try a few ways and don't get frustrated. It just takes a little practice. Now, don't let the paper go yet. If the tumbler or design shifted, either open the clamps to try again or carefully adjust them so the seam is on top. Then squeeze the clamps shut tight so nothing moves. Use the hook and loop strap to hold the handles together tightly, and then you can let go. Add a piece of heat-resistant tape at the middle of the seam, perpendicular to the line. Add several more pieces of tape spanning the seam across its length to keep it really secure. Now undo the strap and open the tumbler tool clamps. You can take it out or leave it in the cradle to stay still. Now this is how I finished taping all of my test tumblers. Add one long piece of tape vertically along the seam to cover it completely across the entire tumbler. Press down along the seam with your scraper to remove any air pockets and make sure the paper is tight against the tumbler. This is really important. Wrap the tumbler in a piece of butcher paper and secure it with heat-resistant tape. Let the butcher paper extend past the tumbler's top and bottom by about 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. I typically tape the top and bottom of the butcher paper too, but using the tumbler tools with the following method worked best to avoid ghosting. Tool test number 2, square or star-shaped pinchers. Next, I tested 2 types of shaped pinchers that I found on Amazon. The link to the exact ones I used are at jennifermaker.com/tumbler pinchers, because there are a lot of these out there. Each came with 2 clamps, so I tried using one at a time and both. First, the star pinchers. Let's try using just one from the set. Open the pincher completely. You can keep it in your hand or set it on your work surface balanced on the bottom points. The opening is wide, so it's easy to position the tumbler inside. Make sure the paper is in place and then center the tumbler and the pincher with the seam facing up. Hold the tumbler and paper still with one hand and pinch the tool closed with the other. Add a piece of heat-resistant tape perpendicular to the seam on either side of the pincher. Add more tape pieces across the entire length of the seam. Then remove the pincher and add a long piece of tape along the seam. And smooth it out just like I had you do with the other tumbler. Now the square pinchers are very similar, but I had better results when I used both of them. You can hold an open pincher in your hand or balance it on your work surface using an edge. The opening is a little smaller than the star pinchers though. To use both pinchers, place one in the tumbler's middle. Again, make sure the seam is secure and facing out between the handles, and then close the clamp. Then add the second clamp at one end, making sure the seam looks good. Add a piece of heat-resistant tape perpendicular to the seam next to the middle pincher on the side with the second clamp. Add more tape pieces across that side of the seam from the center out. Once that side is secure, move the second pincher to the tumbler's other end and repeat the taping process. Keeping the middle secure the whole time gives the best results. Then remove the pinchers and add a long piece of tape along the seam and smooth it out just like the other tumblers. Tool test number 3, hook and loop straps. Another option that's a little more versatile than the pincher clamps are hook and loop straps. I bought a set of 6 to try and found that 3 worked best for this tumbler. You can get them over at jennifermaker.com/tumbler straps. They're almost like really big cable wraps. With the smooth side facing in, put the hook and loop end through the buckle to make a circle. Make sure your design is secure and then slide the loop over the tumbler down to the center. Pull the strap tight and secure it in place. Now you can safely let go of the paper, but it might shift a bit. Take a minute to make sure the edges are even and the seams overlap correctly. Add another strap on either side of the first one to secure the entire wrap. Recheck the edges and seam just in case. Working from the middle out, add heat-resistant tape perpendicular to the seam around the straps. Then remove the straps and apply one long piece of heat-resistant tape to cover the seam completely. Smooth the seam just like the other tumblers. Step 4, sublimate your tumbler. As always, turn on a fan and/or open a window before sublimating to help dissipate the fumes. Now, there are many ways to heat sublimation tumblers, but I used a dedicated convection oven to keep the test consistent. If you want to learn other processes, check out my sublimation cookbook at sublimationcookbook.com. All right, so I'm going to use my oven and set it to 375 degrees Fahrenheit or 190 degrees Celsius. Put on your heat-resistant gloves and place a silicone baking mat onto the middle wire tray. And I'm going to place a thermometer inside just to verify the temperature. I highly recommend this. Set the prepared tumbler horizontally on the silicone baking mat. Bake the tumbler for 1.5 minutes, then rotate it a quarter turn. Repeat until it's baked for 6 minutes total. Take the tumbler out and let it sit on a cooling rack for 1 to 2 minutes. While the tumbler is still warm, carefully peel away the tape, butcher paper, and sublimation paper to reveal your design. Step 5, show it off. Your complete tumbler is ready to be used, given as a gift, and enjoyed for years to come. Now I have additional tools that you can try. First, the cup cradle. I found this neat cup cradle and thought it might come in handy. You can get it at jennifermaker.com/cupcradle. While it doesn't hold the paper in place like the other tools, it does keep the tumbler from rolling away while you're working on it. And I think that's helpful when aligning sublimation designs, but also if you're adding any vinyl, glitter, or really anything else to your tumbler. Plus, it can hold both straight and tapered tumblers. If you have the space and decorate a lot of tumblers, this cradle is worth picking up to keep your cup still. Silicone bands for straight tumblers. If your wraps shift even with tape, you can slip silicone bands right over the butcher paper. You can get these at jennifermaker.com/silicone bands. The bands press the design and paper tight against the tumbler. Now, they can be a little difficult to stretch and position in place, but they can improve your chances of a nice, clear sublimation transfer. So before I share my final results and recommendations, I just want to remind you that a perfect seamless tumbler is a challenge. Even with these tools, you'll have the best chance for success by carefully sizing and trimming the design to have just a little overlap. Also, designs with dark backgrounds or a line already at the seam can really help. But not all designs are like that, I know, so I hope that some of these tools and tips help you. And about those tapered tumblers, I tried these tools on my shaped cups in my materials list, and I did not have great results overall, just so you know. Now, the star clamp held the paper in place on the tapered tumbler, but it didn't quite fit on the larger section. If you get the placement perfect, the clamp might hold the seam well enough for taping, but I can't guarantee it. The silicone bands fit the tapered cups, but it's too easy to accidentally bunch the paper while you're trying to get them positioned correctly. If you're really careful though, the silicone bands might help. But the loop tape measure makes getting the correct dimensions for different circumferences really easy, so it's worth picking these up for tapered tumblers. Overall, I had the best results preparing and applying a design using my tapered tumblers tutorial and the cradle, as you see right here, to make maneuvering the paper easier. You can learn how to adjust these designs to fit a tapered tumbler over at jennifermaker.com/501. Now the results for the straight tumblers. I made a few tumblers with the hook and loop straps, and I had some inconsistent results. But they're nice because you can tighten them with one hand. They're also really inexpensive and small, so you can store them easily. Using more than one at a time does work better, but I had trouble keeping the seam still as I added more, so that was frustrating. However, if you have limited dexterity or hand strength, these are worth trying. Just triple check that your seam hasn't shifted before taping anything down. Next, the tumbler tool. This gadget is really neat, but I will admit it took some practice to get consistent results. It's also the most expensive of the tools I tested, and it takes up the most room, so it won't be the right pick for everyone. I do like that it can double as a cup cradle for all kinds of tumbler projects. So if you decorate cups with vinyl, rhinestones, or anything else in addition to the sublimation, the tumbler tool might really help you a lot. My favorite tool is this set of star-shaped pinchers. They're inexpensive and they held the paper at the perfect tightness to create a nearly invisible seam on my first try. Plus, they're really kind of cute, don't you think? Now, they are bigger than the square pinchers, and the points on the stars make them easier to balance while you're positioning the tumbler. The little grippers are even bigger too, as you can see here. I even got consistent results using a single pincher. If you have dexterity or grip strength issues, these are definitely my top pick. And finally, my favorite find, which is maybe a bit of a cheat, I will admit, but who cares? All right, so even with lots of practice, patience, gadgets, and sometimes you still have a mistake you want to hide. This is normal. I have the most trouble getting a consistent transfer right at the bottom edge of my tumblers. It really bothered me until I found these adorably named super helpful tumbler boots. They're also non-skid, so it's harder to tip the cup. And they protect the bottom. They fit both straight and tapered tumblers. Really, I like to use them even on perfect cups. But as you can see, they do disguise any uneven bottom. Once your tumbler is cool, just slide the boot right onto the bottom. If it doesn't slip on smoothly, put the boot on a solid surface and press the tumbler down into it until it's secure. And you can peel it right off for cleaning. Keep in mind the boot will cover some of the sublimation area, so it's a good idea to keep the lower edge simple so you don't lose anything important. Overall, these tools will help you get straight seams and tight wraps. but they're not a sure path to invisible seams. Yes, the tools help get the print tight against the tumbler and keep things in place for taping, but if you haven't practiced enough to know the right amount of seam to overlap or how to tape and press in the first place, the tools will not really fix the issues. So remember to take your time, practice, and always try to have fun with your projects. Even when things don't go perfectly, you're still being creative, and that is super important. And remember, a tumbler doesn't have to be perfect to hold your favorite drink. It still works perfectly. Now, if you need any more information about sublimation gadgets, links to all of these tools and the supplies I used to make our awesome tumblers today are in the written instructions, and you can visit that over at jennifermaker.com/540. You'll also find a supply list in the description of this video. Now, I know there is so much to learn about sublimation, so come check out my Sublimation Startup mini course at sublimationstartup.com. I'll walk you through all the basics, from setting up your sublimation printer with the right ink to which tools are helpful for beginners. I also show you how to use free software to print your designs and share all of my tips on getting the best results with each press. Not to mention, I've got tons of ideas and designs for projects that you can sublimate. You can sign up right now and learn at your own pace without any pressure. I also have a Facebook group just for sublimation, which is a great way to see all of the fun that you can have with it and all of the amazing things that you can make. Whether you're new to sublimation or you're an old pro, you can join us at jennifermaker.com/sublimation group. I'd love to have you come over, ask questions, share ideas, and get inspired. And that's it for today. Until next time, this is Jennifer Maker reminding you to craft a life you love.